Everyone. Croeso undeb na fferra Prifysgol Caerdydd. So good afternoon and welcome to Cardiff University Student Union elections. My name is Steve. I'm head of student voice here at Cardiff University Student Union for the next 48 days. I have not been fired. I am leaving of my own accord. Just putting that one out there. I am here as Good Steve. And by that I mean I'm the person who's going to help you throughout this entire process. The person supporting this evening is Bad Steve, who will still support you through the process, just in a meaner way. And we also have Jackie here with us as well. So just to check, everyone does have their name in front of them, yeah, with the kind of thing. Wonderful. Brilliant. So, I'll pass you over to Jackie, who's going to talk about elections and her experience of them.
Yes. Hello. So lovely to see you. I really did this speech earlier, but I hadn't rehearsed it and I also made it up. So I'm going to do the same again this way round. So not a lot of people know that I actually ran in 3 student union elections. So all the way back in 2015, when I was first year, I ran to be Student Senate Chair. I didn't know what Student Senate Chair was. I just wanted to get involved in the union. I remember sitting in the seat in that first year thinking, oh my God, what am I doing? I don't even know what a Senate is. Or I don't even know how to campaign, or I don't even know what to do with the budget I was given. So I know exactly how you feel, how lost you feel, how in your mind you're thinking, I'm just going to withdraw. I said that at every single election that I was going to withdraw when I sat here. I can't do it. The forms, no. Money, no. How do you, I just completely get what you're feeling. But persevered, sat in this chair and I went, actually, if I focus less on thinking if I'm going to lose, it's going to be really embarrassing, and I focus all that energy on going, actually, if I put that energy into running a really great campaign, talking to more people about how great this is going to be, maybe I actually would stand a chance. So the second time I ran, I thought, no, I'm going to withdraw. I'm standing now telling you exactly how I feel, because you know what, you have a really, really great shot. And do you know what, you do, I hate this phrase, you do really make a difference, you do really make change. I mean, you might be using the microwave I've just put in across campus. That's a very trivial thing we just put in, but actually, behind closed doors, we're doing phenomenal things. We're earning respect. Students are having their voices elevated to the highest levels because you vote, and you're willing to stand to have that kind of channel through you as well. So don't think that when you're sat here, you're really scared, you're not going to lose, you're not going to make any difference. You really are, and I really want you to believe that. One of the things I really learned as well is that there's no rule, I said this earlier, and I'll explain it as well this time, that there's no rule about being nasty to each other. There's no rule that says don't be nasty to each other. It just says respect each other. And I think that's a very important comparison, because the more time you're spent looking at your opponent's posters going, tearing it down, that's time wasted. A poster's not going to get you a vote. If anything, it's not going to get you anything. So the more energy you invest in just looking forward, I always say don't look sideways at who you're running against, just entirely look forward. Look forward to the position you're running at, and looking at the students who you're trying to sell yourself to. Don't bother looking at anyone else. It's just wasted energy. So that rule about not being nasty is just think that in mind, because it doesn't save any time, doesn't make you feel good either. Why don't you spend that time baking some cookies to hand out? Remember, I was in the 5th line of your manifesto to tell that one student in Joe that actually I'm going to get you a microwave in there, even if you don't have any windows in your building. I'm going to do it. Do you know what? Nuance it. Don't worry about any other opponents. What was the last thing I said in the hour earlier? That. I can't remember.
Enjoy yourself.
Enjoy yourself. You might see that it looks really stressful, and it is hard. It is a really hard week, and I know that Student Voice are going to be doing so much this year to make sure that you don't feel alone, because you're never going to be alone. My office door will be open that entire week. You can come in. I always run my cupboards full of snacks for me. For that week, I'm willing to share. And now that entire week, so if you ever want to email me or drop me a Facebook message or have a chat, you don't have to talk about how bad the week is going. You can just vent or whatever, because I know what exactly it's going to be like. Enjoy yourself. Don't feel alone. Always look forward. Don't look to your side. Remember your manifesto deadlines. Have a great week. Cookies only need 3 ingredients. That's one thing. That doesn't make sense. So I baked cookies for my campaign. But anyway. Any questions? No, I don't think I explained myself very well. That's all right. I thought I was better than the first time. But there you go.
And it was all recorded. Thank you, Jackie.
Okay, clearly my photography budget was not as good as Jackie's on the screen. So I'm Steve Wilford, I'm the Director of Engagement and Participation at the Students' Union. My role is to look after a number of different things, but elections and democracy and student voice is part of that. I am Bad Steve when Steve talks about being Good Steve, and in that whilst I'm here to help and I will always provide whatever support I can, it's probably me that will be dealing with problems that are involved in the election process. That's not to say if I'm phoning you up or dropping you an email, you need to worry about it, but generally I tend to deal with the more difficult stuff or the more upsetting stuff, and Steve tends to deal with all the nice fluffy stuff. So hence the reason that I've got that down there. A couple of things I just wanted to pick on are democracy is, and our democratic system is not about finding the best person, the person with the skills or the best experience, or the person who's committed or thrown their life into the Students' Union for the last 2, 3, 4 years. What successful candidates are and what they've got from the student population is they've gained their confidence, or they've managed to give the electorate, the student body, the view that they're the right person to represent their views. You don't need to have been engaged with the union, you don't need to have worked behind the bar, you don't need to have been a president or a social secretary of a club or society. You just need to spend the next month connecting with people, and that's not talking at them and telling them why you're the best candidate. There's a bit of that, but it's also about listening to them and saying, what can I do for you? What's the union not very good at? What is the university not doing well? What do we need to represent? Where do I need to represent your views? And it's about you listening and absorbing that information and turning that into what your campaign is. So spend the next few weeks talking, but more importantly listening and engaging with students, and that will have a benefit to your campaign. It's brilliant to see lots of familiar faces in the room, and equally lots of new faces. This is a great opportunity to engage students in our organisation. We talk about ourselves as being student-led, and one of the wonderful things about working in the Students' Union is the injection of new enthusiasm and ideas and motivation that comes every time we elect a new team of both campaign officers and thematic officers. On a numbers game, there are more candidates than there are positions available, so there will be more people in this room, and we've run this session an hour and a half ago in the same way. There are more people be unsuccessful in this election than will be successful. So coming from somebody who's lost an election in the Students' Union, and most of the staff team in the room have equally done the same thing, we'd encourage you to plan and hope and aim for a successful election and throw yourself into it, but have another plan. It's not a plan B, it's not the plan below, but have another direction, another path you could take. I wasn't successful in an election, but I have worked in student union since that unsuccessful election, and I get a lot of personal satisfaction out of working in the environment I do. So a non-successful election campaign shouldn't be or doesn't need to be the end of your involvement with the Students' Union. If you're running to be a campaign officer and you're still around as a student next year, please throw yourself into other things. If you are graduating and you're running to be a campaign officer, do keep an eye out. There's lots of opportunities to engage with the union or other unions around the country if you value and you like what unions do for students. Your well-being over the next month is really important to us. We want to make sure we look after you. Most importantly, we want to encourage you to look after yourselves. Elections can be long and distracting from your academic study, and you can feel under pressure to go out and fight for every vote that you can. And sometimes there might be a temptation to skip a meal or go out late one night to get to that social where you think there's some people who might vote for you, but be in first thing in the morning as well. Just look after yourselves. Make sure you've got friends around you who can support you and can help you out. And that's not necessarily campaigning for you, but just people can look out for you and say, go on, call it a night tonight, and maybe they'll buy you a pizza or a Chinese takeaway when you're feeling tired and low. So look after yourselves. We will check in with you. We've got some members of staff that will check in with all candidates throughout the election period. If you want us to stop checking in on you, tell us to leave you alone. That's fine. We won't be offended by that in the slightest. But our default position is we'll reach out to each of you periodically through the process and just check how you're getting on, and we can signpost you towards various support networks if you need it, if things are getting on top of you. I'll hand back to Stephen now to continue the process.
So, we want to talk a little bit about the roles that are available. particularly sabbatical officer roles. So if you are running to be a campaign officer, you are welcome here. That's fine, that's wonderful. I appreciate some of the confusion between the groupings. So when we're talking about being a sabbatical officer, it is fun. You get to do photo shoots, you do varsity, you do all this kind of cool stuff. However, you also do a lot of reading. So if you're into reading, this is the perfect role for you. Like, it is bang when it comes to reading. There's also a lot of governance around this role. So understanding an organisation, helping its development, helping it grow. There's a lot of work around that. And there's also a lot of work around finance. This is a sexy role, isn't it? Governance, finance, reading, but they are important parts of being a sabbatical officer. You're a trustee of an organisation, which means you have a lot of responsibility for governance and finances of the organisation. So when it kind of comes to it, the reason we're talking to you about it now is that if you are successful, we don't want you to come in on your second day and be like, what, there's reading? We want you to think about how this will impact kind of the rest of your life. It will set you up to do something amazing, but you need to be prepared for the fact it is a lot of hard work. A lot of the stuff you see on social media from our offices is the fun days and is the giant things, but there is a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to make those days happen. I want to talk a little bit about public perception as well. So particularly this happened about 2 or 3 years ago within our elections, where someone posted the phrase, one of us would do a better job than the female rowing president. Now, after a conversation we had with that person, they alluded to us that they were trying to say that it was because they thought there was a female rowing team and a male rowing team, and they thought they were better than the female rowing captain. However, that comes across as sexist quite quickly, quite easily. That is just sexism. So the reason we put this up for you is because it's a worked example. This has happened within our elections. So consider what you are trying to say and how you are trying to say it. This person didn't have any understanding of what the rowing team did or how it worked. So they assumed it was the same as their club, which it wasn't. So think about how you're engaging in these activities and how someone could interpret what you're saying in a multitude of ways. The other person I want to talk about is Toby Young. Has anyone heard of Toby Young? Okay, I will take that as a no. Toby Young was appointed to the board of the Office for Students. So the Office for Students is a very powerful entity within higher education. Toby Young was deemed as controversial. However, he tweeted a variety of things that people would consider to be sexist and homophobic and a whole bunch of other stuff. They went through his social media and Toby was removed from his post because of that. You're all running elections, and I'm assuming a lot of you have social media. You may not be horrible people, you may not be saying horrible things, you may not be liking certain things on social media. You just need to consider how you are under a microscope during elections. People will be looking at your social media. They'll be unearthing things that you may have done or said in the past. You maybe need to have a little bit of a scrub of your social media to make sure that you are happy with everything that is out there about you. It has been known within student union elections for a lot of things to be brought up, particularly Swansea, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, a candidate was removed based off of what they'd been saying on social media several years ago due to complaints. So basically have a think about what you've posted on social media already and think about if that portrays you in the light that you want it to. Campaign officers. So campaign officers are part of the 17-strong team. When we talk about officers, we're talking about all of them. So we have 10 campaign officers that are there to represent the interests of particular groups on particular issues and campaign. They are there to change the university and to change the student union and change wider society, to look at liberated objectives and make sure that we have a more equal and more equitable society. And there is a distinct difference there between equity and equality, and I will leave you to research what I mean by that. These roles are very, very important to represent those particular issues, and we try and keep in contact with them as much as possible. So if you are elected into post, we are very needy, and we do email you all the time. We kind of need a response from you to make sure you're okay if you are running to be a campaign officer, and each of you have an allocated person within the Student Voice team to make sure you are supported. So I'm going to pass you back now to Steve, who's going to talk about who runs the Student Union.
Okay, so I hope you'll see that when we talk about the Student Union, we talk about being student-led, and that's the sort of the message and the ethos we try and put out. Just to try and give you a bit of a flavour as to what that means in practice. When we're pushing the organisation into the limelight, when it's in the media or when there's good stuff going on, it will always be student representatives who are at the front of that. It'll be sabbatical officers, campaign officers, sometimes leaders of societies or clubs or others, to represent the organisation of the students. So it's there for, and it's generally steered by students. At the same point, we run a number of complex, often highly regulated services, like a letting agency, like a nightclub and things like that, that are managed by professional members of staff, people who have an expertise in a particular industry to operate those services. And where those two things interact is sort of where the interesting bit is, particularly for sabbatical officers, but also to an extent for campaign officers. So we talk about political leadership and operational leadership. Political leadership comes from students. It is people like yourselves. It's what we hear from things like Speak Week that are taking place at the minute. It's what comes through AGM, through Student Senate, what societies and clubs tell us, what our student reps tell us. That all feeds into how we formulate what the organisation's view is on particular topics that are either internal to the Students' Union, or where we're lobbying the university, or where we're engaging with other organisations in the city, the police, the council, landlord associations and so on. Where these two things come together is called the Board of Trustees. The Students' Union is a charity that has a board of 15 individuals who are legally responsible for the affairs of the organisation. They are personally accountable for making sure the organisation fulfills its duties. That's some very interesting stuff about how it achieves its objectives, about how it drives to enhance the student experience. Some of it perhaps a little bit less exciting, but equally important about are we fulfilling our needs and our requirements set out by the Health and Safety Executive, by HMRC, the Revenues and Tax Revenue and Customs organisation. The fire inspections, the building alarm systems, the civil engineering requirements of the building. There's all sorts of different things there that are equally part of that Board of Trustees role. The Board of Trustees is made up of a number of different groups of people. The 7 sabbatical officers, the 7 full-time officers form obviously 7 of those places. There's also then a mixture of a number of appointed students, so 3 appointed students, who again bring another different type of student view to that body, and then a number of external individuals who bring expertise from elsewhere in the city. And we've got experts in media and communications, in finance, in law, and other different areas who come together providing oversight to the organisation. So the Board of Trustees are ultimately responsible and accountable for the affairs of the organisation, and have the final say on everything that happens within the organisation. What they will do is they will take the student input, they will take the student senate motions, the AGM motions, the student feedback from feedback surveys from Speak Week, and they will mould that and build that into how the organisation moves forward. Sometimes they might need to disagree, and there have been instances where the Board of Trustees have not agreed to take something forward that has come from a democratic forum, but they will only do so to protect the financial interests or the legal interests or the reputational interests of the organisation. So by going through the election process, you're part of this or you're trying to enter this governance structure, and on the other end of it is some stuff, as Steve has said, some of it's quite challenging, some of it's quite boring. Talking about boiler systems for the organisation, for the building, is not necessarily the reason why many of you are in the room, but it is sometimes very important decisions and very expensive decisions that need to be made about how we run the organisation. The bit I guess I haven't touched on is so the Board of Trustees provide direction, strategy and budget to a chief executive. They direct the most senior member of staff in the organisation as to what they want the organisation to achieve. It's then for the chief executive to employ members of staff like myself, like Steve, Taz and others to deliver those functions. So our role and our direction comes from the chief executive, and that's given to the chief executive by the Board of Trustees, for which sabbatical officers sit on and campaign officers can provide feedback into as well. Does that make sense? Okay.
So just a discussion about what the meat of this meeting is. So we'll talk through the timeline of the entirety of the elections, so from now all the way through until the results. We'll talk about what publicity is available to you that the Students' Union will help you with, We'll talk through the election principles or rules. We'll talk through kind of what happens if you break them. Hopefully none of you will. That would be lovely. And we'll also talk through the process of voting. So that's kind of our objectives for the next kind of hour or so. So, to provide some context around elections, we have a system called returning officers. So returning officers are the people who make sure that elections are run appropriately and effectively. So this person is external. His name is Reese. He will make sure that we are abiding by our own rules, as well as some government legislation that was passed in 1994, Part 2, Paragraph 22 of the Education Act 1994. It's a very fun document, as you can tell. Reese is there to make sure that we are doing everything above board and that you're all treated fairly. On the ground is myself and Steve. So as we've kind of alluded to, Steve will handle the complaints. So things that are not going as well in the election process. And then myself will be focusing on just the operations and delivery of the elections. That includes things like a breakfast every day, making sure that you're eating, and giving you fun stuff like that. So the nice things of elections are kind of where I'm going to sit. However, if there are problems with anything that's happening, you can talk to either of us about it. Don't be afraid of having that conversation. And as part of that, I think I've said this before, I'm quite needy. I will be emailing you a lot. The purpose of that is not to annoy you, it's to support you. The reason we have this on the screen is because it might be that elections at Cardiff is going into your junk inbox, so please mark me as not spam. From the elections finishing, mark me as spam, don't mind. But to help you through this process, make sure that you can receive emails from us and can send us them back. At the same time, if email isn't your thing and you instead want to have a phone call with me, feel free to give me a call. That's the number available there. And we will also we will ask you the question of are you reading our emails? The reason we will ask you that kind of question is that we may say something has happened in a particular area of campus, you need to stay away from it, or you need to not undertake an activity. If you are still doing that activity after we've sent you an email expressly saying do not do it, we'll have a fun conversation with you about how you are breaking rules. And it won't be fun, but I'm saying it in a nice way. As it sounds more menacing, I suppose. But yeah, we will give you kind of a 24-hour leeway, but if we find out that you've read our email in that preceding time, we will then, again, have a lovely conversation with you about how we expect you to be responding to our emails and engaging with us. And ask questions as well. When we're sending stuff out to you, send us one back being like, what are you chatting about? Please, can you explain this to me? Absolutely fine. Please do that. So on page 8 of your info pack, you will see this timeline. We've streamlined it quite a bit just to make it as easy as possible for you to run in the elections. As you can see, nominations have opened. They opened on the 2nd of December. We're doing a briefing session today, so everything is live. And then on Saturday, we have a candidate development day. That day will focus on branding, campaigning activity, student demographic. We'll talk to you about how to actually just walk up and talk to people about the elections. We'll also give you hints and tips around things like Buffer, which is a software you can use to help schedule your social media posts, so you're not just trying to do everything all at once. Basically hints and tips on how to succeed in the elections in terms of being a wonderful candidate. But those will also be available online if you can't make Saturday. So all of that kind of stuff is available to you. There's also wellbeing sessions as well that we're putting on this year, so teaching you about self-care and making sure that you are practicing that. That is a session we'll be repeating on more than one occasion because we appreciate you're busy people with busy lives, but we still care about your well-being like that much that we will do it as many times as we need to help you in terms of this process. The first deadline, and I suppose the only deadline, is your posters and your manifestos. So all of you have been able to log on to cardiffstudents.com to be able to nominate yourselves, yes? Wonderful, brilliant. That is where you'll be uploading your manifestos. So that kind of portal area there, you have 200 words. We'll talk a little bit about manifestos in a moment. Your deadline will be 17th of February at 11 AM. That is also the time that we need your posters in for us to be able to print them ready for you. We'll talk through posters and different things like that on Saturday. One thing I would like you to do this evening is to scratch out Candidate Match. We're not doing that. We're trying to make this as easy as possible for you. Candidate Match was kind of like a BuzzFeed quiz where you'd take it and then students would take it and it would match you up. No one used it, so we're not going to do that for you anymore. So that's an easier thing for you to tick off your list. On the first day of voting, you can come and collect your publicity. We'll be in the room right next door to this one. So from 8:45 a.m. I'll be ready and waiting to give you all of your stuff, including t-shirts and posters and everything else. Voting will open on that day at 9 a.m. and voting will then close on the Friday. We'll do a little bit of a debrief with everyone on that Friday, check in, make sure you're all right, make sure that all of the complaints have been dealt with, everything like that. And then finally the results will be on the Saturday in a class where we will reveal the successful candidates in the election. So that's our timeline that we're working to. When talking about publicity, we will be printing all the manifestos. So that will all be in one nice little pack that if a student were so inclined, they can read all of it in one go and go, yes, democracy! But if they want to read it at shorter sections, they can. So all of that will be available both in print and online. We will put your manifesto everywhere we can think of putting it. We'll try everything we can to kind of push that for you. Taz from my team has been taking photos of you as well. We will put your photos next to your manifesto so people can see who's actually saying the words. Just a quick note on manifestos in terms of web links. It might be that you want to have more of a say than you can in 200 words. You might have huge ideas that are going to change Cardiff University and you're passionate about them, but you can't fit it into 200 words. So if you want to use an external site or a social media post or whatever, feel free to link to that site through your manifesto. However, we recommend you shortening that link because what you don't want is www.steveraf.com/vote for me, I'm amazing. It's taking up a lot of your manifesto space that could instead be a shorter link. So we'll send some information around about Bitly. Has anyone heard of Bitly? Like shorter links, just to give you that space and that ability to put something forward that you're happy and you're proud of. We will also provide you with posters and flyers. You don't have to have them, but we provide them for you. So you submit your poster design, we will print around 200 flyers for you, and around 30 kind of A3 posters for you to put anywhere that you'd like, once you've asked permission of the building owners. Your campaign allowance is £30. Steve will talk a little bit more about finances in a moment, but everyone has £30 to spend on their campaign. You do not have to spend £30. You can spend anywhere from 0 to 30. You don't need to spend anything. We do have some years where people just don't spend any money. They're happy actually just talking to people and using the stuff we put forward for them. But everyone has access to that £30 that will be reimbursed. So elections should cost you £0. Talking about manifestos, so for those who don't know what that means, it's your declaration of intent. Why are you the best person? Why are you amazing? Ask yourself that question now, and then write it down. Tell people why you are that person, why you are going to be amazing in post. You need to sell who you are and your experience. That's the kind of thing that wins people over, is manifestos and personalities. One of the fun things to talk about with manifestos is formatting. So, no bullet points, no underlining, no bold, nothing, just plain text. If you want to do a numbered list, absolutely fine, all good. However, when using bullet points, our translation system will remove them, then they'll go into an Excel spreadsheet and it will lose formatting, so you lose everything in that process. When we then try and add that in, we could miss something, and you end up with a manifesto that doesn't look the way you want it to. That being said, we also do reserve the right to format your manifesto for you. So a prime example of that is that if I was to put, hello, I'm Steve, space, 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 vote for me because space, you're taking up too much kind of room in what we're trying to promote in terms of manifestos. So we may delete all those spaces and kind of crunch it so that everyone has the same space within manifesto booklets and online. So that's to ensure consistency and fairness. We don't usually do that. I think we've done it once, just so it kind of boxes up in the right way, but just an FYI that we do reserve the right to do that. Now I'm going to pass you over to Steve to talk about principles.
Okay, so Steve mentioned earlier about the Education Act, and I certainly didn't believe it when I was a student, but there's provision within the Education Act in 1994 which determines how student union elections need to be run and makes a number of provisions which it imposes on the university as requirements for them to undertake. So the reason we have some of the rules and the reason we go through some of the things we do is not just because we like elections and this is what Steve enjoys spending his time doing. This is governed by government legislation and is enforceable from the university as well. The first bit, I guess, is that the rules apply to all of you as candidates. It doesn't matter whether you've understood the rules or not, or you've read the document, or you've asked questions. the rules apply equally to everybody, and ignorance or a lack of understanding of the rules is not an excuse for a breach of the rules to take place. So please make sure, if you've got queries or questions as we go through today, shout out questions or come and grab us afterwards if you want some clarification. Email us over the next few weeks if there's anything you're unsure of. But please make sure that you understand and follow the principles that we lay down. And if they don't just apply to you, they apply for anybody who's campaigning for you as well. So please make sure that we're recording this session and a meeting beforehand. Please make sure you sit down with your campaign team and make sure they watch the video and they have as clear an understanding of the rules as you do. We have excluded candidates in fairly recent history for the actions, not of themselves, but of the actions of the candidates, the campaign team that have been there to support them. We don't like doing that, it's always the last resort, but it is sometimes something we need to do. We don't have a long list of thou shalt not and you mustn't do this and you mustn't do that. We talk about these 5 principles and everything we want you to do should in some way fit within these. We ask you to consider the spirit of the principles and the rules that we talk through, not the letter, so don't try and find out. So if we say you can't use blue tack on the walls, don't buy white tack and then stick that up. You get what we're trying to say. If you're trying to find loopholes in what we're saying, then the likelihood is we will declare that a breach of the rules, even if it's not explicitly written in here. One of the things that Steve mentioned is we will email you lots, we will update, potentially add in different interpretations of rules to react to things that are happening on campus. That might not be because people are doing something wrong. It might be that the university has changed their mind on something. It might be that local activity around the building, we've got lots of building sites, for example. There might be safety issues around what you're doing that we need to draw back on. So please read, listen, and understand what rules we're talking about, and pose us questions if any of them don't make sense or you've got any query about them. So to talk through the 5 principles in a bit more detail, the first one is you need to let students freely cast their own vote without undue influence. And there's a couple of things we'd encourage you to think about here. So first of all, quite clearly, voting for using somebody else's vote and you casting a vote that belongs to somebody else is not them voting. You need to make sure that if a student is voting, you walk away, leave them alone, don't look at who they're voting for. Once they've got their phone on that app, when they're on their laptop, when they're in a computer room and they're conducting a vote, say, yeah, I hope you can vote for me, and walk away and leave them be. Don't stand over their shoulder. What we don't want to hear is reports of students saying, well, I wanted to vote, but the candidate stood right there, so I could not vote for them, but I really want to vote for somebody else. That's not freely casting your vote. Sometimes it might feel frustrating. It might feel that you want to help students who are struggling to navigate and understand what the voting system is. What might be you saying, what you just need to do is click here and then scroll down and click that, and that's your vote submitted. That might be you trying to help. What that might look like to another candidate who's a competitor of yours, or to us, might be, well, that's you just telling them who they need to vote for and walking them through the process. So if anyone's got any difficulties, anybody who's trying to vote for you, doesn't understand how it works or needs help with it, say, look, I can't help you do the process yourself. There's ballot stations around campus. Go and speak to them. They'll be able to provide you some assistance. Okay. And again, we have excluded candidates who have been helping students cast votes through the voting process. So please don't do that. Another strand to this would be to make sure that I think most of you will be second years or above. You will have seen, I'm sure, and you've been accosted by candidates in previous years as you've been around campus. They'll often give you a sweet or a tea bag or a biscuit or something that's an opportunity to start a conversation with a voter. You're welcome to do that, but please treat that as being something of absolutely minimum value. It should be a penny or two per item, and it's there to introduce or to be used as a starter to open a conversation. It's not a reward for voting for you. So it needs to be freely given, irrespective of who they're going to vote for, and it needs to be of negligible financial value. Okay. Any questions on that principle? Does that make sense to people? Okay. The second one is make sure you obey the law and union and university policies. And the simple test we'd encourage you to think about here would be, if somebody saw me doing what I'm about to do and I was to get in trouble, whether that's a university staff member, police officer, a parent or a guardian or a family member, whoever it is, if you get in trouble for doing what you were doing, you shouldn't be doing it. What we're not going to do is repeat all the university rules, all the legal and local authority rules about what you can and can't do in the city and around campus. You should know in your own mind what you can and can't do. You shouldn't be accessing parts of a university building to hang a banner over that particularly prominent spot if it says no unauthorised access beyond this point. Being an election candidate doesn't absolve you of responsibility for following all the normal rules that you need to. When we talk about union rules, one of the things we will equally talk to you about outside of this meeting as well is if you are a member of staff of the Students' Union, so if you work behind the bar in the letting agency, if you're a volunteer for hours and you work in the advice team or Give It a Go or one of our execs, you may have access to student information, you may have access to some of our social media accounts, some of our equipment, facilities, telephones, IT equipment, printers, photocopiers, all that kind of stuff. To be very clear, there is no union resource, physical, social media, electronic or otherwise, that you can use in your election campaign. So anything that you have by virtue of being a volunteer for the organisation or being a staff member of the organisation, you cannot use as part of your election campaign. When it comes to the voting week, we'll be talking to recruiting managers, line managers within commercial teams and employees within the organisation, and those that engage with volunteers who work for the union on union business. And we'll ask them not to provide you with shifts and we wouldn't expect you to work during that period. What we'd also include there is for individuals who again are workers or volunteers for us, at any point a student would believe or have the perception that you're representing the union, you cannot be campaigning. So that would include things like wearing lanyards, work uniforms, t-shirts, being behind the bar or being in an office space where you're a student would view you as being a staff member or a volunteer rather than being an average student. So just please be careful of that for anybody who's involved in those activities. And as with all these things, come and talk to us if you're unsure how that applies in your particular case or your particular event. Any questions on that section? Okay, on to the third one then. So treat each other as you wish to be treated. And Jackie mentioned earlier, there is no rule saying you can't be horrible to each other. One person's legitimate challenge and challenge about somebody's policy might feel quite hurtful and harmful. What we're not going to play is be the arbiter as to what is acceptable challenge between candidates. We absolutely encourage you to challenge each other on your manifesto points, on your policies. It's perfectly legitimate for you to say, I don't think that is in the best interest of our students. No, I don't think we should be investing time or representing student views on this part. But when you're challenging each other, challenge each other's policies. Make sure it's about the policy, not the person. Don't target somebody because of who they are or what course they're on or what they look like or their gender or their height or their age or sexuality or anything else like that. That would all be taken a fairly dim view. But that doesn't say you can't challenge each other. Elections should be about debate and about genuine choices and you shining a light on why you're the best person. Having said that, and again, if you've seen elections in previous years, sometimes people enjoy them and they go very well and there's a buoyant atmosphere between candidates. Sometimes there isn't and candidates fall out. Believe me, the week and the lead-up period as well will be far, far, far more enjoyable, rewarding, useful, not just for you but for other students on campus if you take it in the most positive way that you can. Don't keep an eye on what everybody else is doing, as I think Steve or Jackie mentioned earlier. Focus on why you're the best candidate, not why. Well, don't waste your energy and your time and your headspace on what somebody else is doing. Just make sure you're the best person. That can involve challenging other people's ideas, but make sure it's about pushing yourself forward. I'm sure you'll have all seen on the news or on TV generally, when you see MPs arguing in Parliament and they're taking sly digs at each other about that are just snide and horrible, it turns people off from the election. It will turn off voters. There's some good evidence that we have that when elections run well and candidates get on with each other, more students engage. If it becomes hostile within that environment, all we end up doing is making everybody's life harder, less enjoyable for you, and less students will engage in the process as well. One of the other things we incorporate here as well is treat each other's campaign materials with respect. Every year posters do get taken down and go missing or get defaced. Banners disappear in the middle of the night. It's very difficult for us to react to that. If a poster is there one day and not there the next day, despite what you think or who you think might have done that, it's very difficult for us to understand what evidence there is that we can act upon that. What tends to happen is as soon as somebody's poster gets taken down, they have an idea who they think has taken that down. They start, or they or their campaign team sometimes will start removing the posters of somebody else. That person then thinks, well, I bet that was so-and-so, I'm going to take theirs down. And before we know it, we've cleared half a campus of all posters, and nobody wins. There is no winner. Every candidate is just knocked down as a result of that. Same thing for banners and things like that. So if somebody's got their poster up in a prime location or their banner up in a great location, it'd be great if mine was there, but let me go and find somewhere better for it. Don't try and knock theirs down or destroy theirs in the process. And generally the week will be 100 times more enjoyable for all of you if you engage in it with that spirit. The other thing that's worth noting, I guess, is you'll form friendships and allegiances across various different roles. You may end up, if you are successfully elected, you may end up working alongside somebody you weren't campaigning for. The person you were campaigning with or alongside might not be successful, and you might be working with one of their competitors. So make sure you're not burning your bridges before you're even into that position, that you'll be able to work with anybody across the organisation. So number 4, items, and this is the financial element, so items that are primarily purchased, produced or consumed in your election campaign need to be accounted for within that £30 allowance that Steve spoke about earlier. Apologies, this is a bit small, you won't be able to read this where you are. It's not in the packs, but we will email it round to you in the next day or so. The £30 is an amount that we'll reimburse you, but that is also the cap as to how much money you can spend. So you can't spend £30 of our money and 25 of your own. £35 is the absolute maximum amount of money you can spend on your campaign. And there are a number of things that you need to account for in that £30, and there are a number of things that we don't need you to. And I'll try and explain, and I've got a long and proud history of making this the most least understandable part of the talk, so pose questions if there are any. So the things you need to account for is any printed material, so any posters, flyers, business cards, if you want to get a banner made by a professional banner company, all that kind of stuff needs accounted for. Professionally produced t-shirts, again, need to be accounted for. And also anything you're giving out, so if you're giving out sweets, if you're making biscuits, the ingredients need to be accounted for. Anything that you're distributing as part of your election campaign, you need to account for within that allowance. What you don't need to account for is all the stuff we expect you're going to have already. So you don't need to give us an allowance for drawing pins, blue tack, string, staples, Tipp-Ex, pens, paint, those kind of things. Equally the same with bed sheets or with shower curtains that people often make banners out of. If you're making your own homemade banner out of an old bed sheet and a marker pen, that's fine, you don't need to account for that. If you're using the print centre downstairs and producing a nice vinyl cut, brightly coloured thing, you need to account for it. Same thing with clothing. If you're producing printed clothing with a professional design on it, screen printed, that needs accounting for. If you've got an old t-shirt and you're scribbling on a marker pen, you don't need to account for it. Okay. Also other things that you use as part of your campaign. So we've had questions for before. You don't need to account for your parking tickets if you're parking your car near campus for attending a lecture shout out. You don't need to account for a proportion of your car insurance or the wear of your rubber on your bike tyres or your shoes. These are all genuine questions that we've had some posed to us before. We expect that you will have access to these various different things, but what you must just account for is printing, things you're giving away, or anything that's professionally produced. Does that make sense? Was that clear-ish? Okay. Okay, the final section then is when campaigning starts. And we've got two phases of when campaigning will start. So as of tomorrow, you'll receive an email from us, which will include the notice of poll. And the notice of poll is the list of all candidates who are standing in each position. So it's when you will formally find out all the people who you're running against. When you receive that, with the same time we're posting that onto the Student Union website, that's the point where you can start the first phase of campaigning. That first phase of campaigning, in essence, is you talking. So we used to have a system a few years ago where, coming out of this meeting, we said, you can't even talk about elections until voting opens. And people kind of said, well, how do I know what students want if I can't talk to them about it? What if my housemate asks me a question and I'm running? Can I say yes? You can talk to whoever you want to talk to. We expect that all to be face-to-face contact, talking to people. Equally on social media, you can engage with people on groups. And what we'd encourage you to do is to spend that time talking and telling people why you're the best candidate, but more importantly, listening to what they've got to say. So if you're standing for VP societies and volunteering, you're talking to committee members from various societies, you'd be foolish just to say, this is what I want to do, and list out your top 3 things, your top 5 things, without going, and what else is wrong that you need us, what else do you see that's wrong that I could try and help solve? So use it as much for finding out and informing what you want to do in the future and helping develop your manifesto over a period of time, as it is pushing out your finished article. What we wouldn't expect to see from tomorrow until the start of elections is any printed materials. So your posters, your flyers, anything that you're producing, again, whether it's our information, which you won't receive until that day anyway, but if you're producing anything yourself, we don't want to see any printed materials which is campaign material before that day. We also wouldn't allow you to use any of your financial allowance, so use any of your £30 before that period as well. So if you're buying big tubs of sweets to give away to people, as those conversation starters, you can't use those until campaigning starts. You can spend the money, you can spend the £30 from tomorrow onwards, but you can't use anything that you spent the money on until the 2nd of March, which is when voting starts. Does that make sense? Okay. Covered most of that.
I'm taking work.
Yeah, done that one. Yeah, I think that's all on that one. That is the rules. Let's say that there's not a long list of things that you can't do, but I hope you understand the framework and the principles by which we want you to operate in the election. One of the other things that you should be mindful of is if you are successful in the election, you'll be meeting with and engaging with senior members of staff in the university and the local community. What you don't want to do is have the sort of hangover of a poorly conducted election tarnish or undermine your credibility. So again, when you look at MPs running elections, people who do things inappropriately are labelled as that throughout their term of office as well. So make sure you can go into that role either because you've been successfully elected, or you can finish the election having not been successfully elected and hold your head high and say, yeah, I fought a fair fight, I didn't come out on top, but I give my best shot. Okay. In terms of breaching rules, the obvious thing is please don't do it. People who try and cheat and bend the rules or find loopholes, invariably we do find out and we do remove people from the election as a result of people seeking to seek an unfair advantage. The most important bit on this slide is make sure you ask us beforehand. Ask us questions if you've got any doubt. It's far easier for us to give you advice in advance of you doing something which you think may or may not be on the right side of what we deem acceptable, than it is for us to try and unpick something that's happened that we've deemed unacceptable afterwards. You can make complaints about other candidates. Any student or staff member can make a complaint about your actions. We equally don't need a complaint to investigate what we think are instances of inappropriate behaviour or breaches of conduct. What we do need you to do is formally submit a complaint to us. You're welcome to come and grumble and go, oh, you'll never guess what so-and-so did, and isn't it outrageous that X person X has done this, we'll humour you and go, yeah, but unless you put it in writing to us on the form that Steve will talk to in a minute, we won't consider it a complaint. So if something is we will only consider it a complaint if it reaches us through the formal channels. Otherwise, you're welcome to vent, but we won't act upon it. Yeah, complaints aren't needed to take action, as I said a moment ago. And in terms of what we do then when a complaint comes in, or we think we've spotted something that's inappropriate, what we'll do is we'll always talk to a candidate to understand what has happened, and there always is at least two sides to a story. And what we will determine is what has a breach occurred, has something that is a breach of the rules, either something explicit that I've said today, or something that's implied in the principles we've talked about, and we'll determine, has that happened? The next thing we'll do is say, has that given someone an advantage? So sometimes somebody can often inadvertently do something which is against the rules, but it doesn't actually have any material effect on the election. So if you imagine when people are putting banners up on the first day on the Monday morning, if somebody drops their banner for 30 seconds whilst they're trying to hang it off before 9 o'clock and it's on show for for 30 seconds or so, that's not materially going to change the election, and we go, look, you need to be a bit more careful, but that's probably going to be the end of the discussion that we would have on it. So sometimes there's no action to be taken. What we'll do is, if there has been if we do believe there's been an impact or there's been an advantage gained, we'll try and figure out a creative way of levelling that playing field, so that every other candidate in the position that you're running for has the same opportunity that you've had. Sometimes that might mean a restriction on your activity or your campaigning. Sometimes it might mean about opening something else up to other candidates who've not had access to things previously. There's fairly limited scope for us to do that, if we're being perfectly honest. There isn't loads of things we can do. We don't penalise people by taking votes off them. That's an inquantifiable thing for us to do, so we won't do that. We may restrict some campaigning activity for a period of time. That's one of the techniques we may use. But it is difficult to re-level that playing field. If we can't re-level the playing field, one of the only solutions then available to us is to remove candidates from the election. As I said earlier, we absolutely don't like doing this. It is always a last resort. But if we can't guarantee the election has been fair and somebody has sought or gained an unfair advantage, either intentionally or inadvertently, sometimes what we have to do is remove people from elections. It doesn't happen every year, but it does happen every 2 to 3 years. There is somebody, and sometimes multiple people, that are removed from the election. We don't want that to be the end of your election experience, as much as you wouldn't want to. So please try and make sure we don't end up in that position. To the form then.
So as I've made clear, I'm very boring, but I love talking about forms. So this form is the complaints form. So you just go to cardiffstudents.com/elections/complaints. I appreciate you can't read it because it's quite small. But as soon as you go to cardiffstudents.com/elections, on the right hand side of the page, you can also see the complaints form there. As Steve has mentioned, if you want to have a grumble, that's fine, but it isn't a case of a complaint until it is submitted to us through this system. It might be that you have a photo or a video, just send that directly to Elections at Cardiff. Unfortunately, you can't upload through this form. I'm working on it. But yeah, it provides you the opportunity for you to say how you believe an unfair advantage has been gained, and also what kind of resolution you'd like. It might be you just want an apology and you just leave it there. That's absolutely fine. Tell us that. Let's have that constructive conversation about it. And yeah, how we believe we can redress the balance, and also which principles is broken. It can't just be, I really hate Derek. There isn't a Derek running, by the way. But you can't just submit that to us. That's not a complaint. It needs to tell us why hating Derek is breaching a principle. I'm a fun sponge, no stickers. The reason for this is that when you put them onto walls or onto doors or whatever, people in certain departments that look after the building get really angry at me because they don't come off or they leave stains or whatever. So just to make it completely easy, no stickers. Like it's just an easier rule. Some people also ask the question, oh, well if I give someone a sticker, they can wear it themselves. Nothing to stop them from removing that sticker and then putting it on a wall. You are then the person that is responsible for said sticker. So, as I say, fun sponge, but no stickers. There was usually previously a rule around loud campaigning, particularly at the crossroads. We've moved our elections, so now be as loud as you want, go for it. Maybe I'm not in a library, but think about where you can be loud and to gain attention from people. So, those of you running for a sabbatical office position, so that's anything with the word president in, you will have a trustee declaration form at the back of your pack. You need to read through this to understand what it is to be a sabbatical officer and trustee of an organisation. There are certain requirements that are befitting of you. So for example, anyone here under the age of 18? Brilliant, you've all passed the first hurdle of being able to be a trustee. Jude, I saw that. You with your sneaky little finger there. Being a trustee and director also means that you're financially or legally responsible for an organisation. So you need to let us know if you have been bankrupt before, or the organisation you've worked for has been previously been bankrupt. There is an error on that form. Steve, can you say what date is incorrect on that form, please?
Test. Yeah, sorry. So in your packs, it will talk about the start date for a sabbatical officer being the 15th of June. That date's incorrect. It's going to be the 22nd of June, so it's a week later than advertised in the pack. So apologies. The date was right. It wasn't Steve's pack. It was wrong. We just moved the date.
So not me. Okay. Yeah, first 4 weeks is really important for us to be able to make sure that you are trained and inducted into the Students' Union. We don't just want to be like, and here you go, you're responsible for a £3 million turnover organisation, or a £10 million turnover organisation. We want to give you that structure. So those first 4 weeks, if there are issues where you have something booked, have a conversation with us. I will be very open. Glastonbury does not count as a reasonable excuse for you to not be a sabbatical officer or here during this first 4 weeks, okay? You can choose between Adele or whoever is headlining and being a sabbatical officer. I'm sorry, there's just no kind of way around that. But if there are issues, have a chat with us. You also need to make sure that you understand what we're asking you within that form. So if you've got questions, come find us, let's have a chat and figure out what we can do to make that work for you. There is also within this pack a compliance form. So the reason we're showing this to you now is that you don't freak out on the Friday when we close for you to be like, why are you asking me to sign this? It's to show you what is there and what we are asking you to say, yes, I agree, the election count should go ahead. That form must be with us by that 5 p.m. on that Friday, or the 10 past 5 on that Friday, close of voting. The other side to kind of add to this, and apologies Steve if you've mentioned this, complaints need to be with us before the close of voting. We can't do anything once voting is closed. So if there is a problem, you need to let us know as soon as possible. Do not wait around. If something happens on the Monday, don't wait until the Friday. As soon as you can do, have a conversation with us so we can redress the balance and have a conversation with you about it. So yeah, that compliance form you don't need to worry about right now. It's a conversation for you to have at the close of elections.
Sorry, just two quick things there. So first of all, where Steve's there saying if you want to submit a complaint about something you've seen, you need to do so that as soon as possible. To add to that, if you don't submit it straight away, it can have an impact on what we can do as an outcome. So it's not just that we want to find out and deal with it as soon as possible. It can also change what the potential outcome is, both in your favour or against your favour in terms of how we can redress that balance. And then to be clear, the compliance form that's on the screen there is called the candidate declaration in the back, just in terms of language use. So, thank you.
Just a little bit around Welsh language. So Undeb Federal Prifysgol Caerdydd is a bilingual institution. So we'll be asking you to think about bilingualism when you are campaigning. Make friends with people who speak Welsh. Have a conversation with them about your manifesto. Make a friend who can speak Welsh who can then translate for you, like as you're going out talking to people or having social media posts or doing whatever. We've all seen how Google Translate does not work. It just doesn't. So don't try that with this election because you'll end up saying something probably offensive rather than what you're trying to relay. As you would have seen throughout this entire presentation, we've been as bilingual as possible. We will also be setting some times for you to submit text for your flyers if you want it in Welsh. We can do that for you so we have a bilingual poster, bilingual flyer, making it as accessible as possible. But think about how you can use the Welsh language throughout the entirety of your campaign. We have over 2,000 Welsh speakers at Cardiff University. Being able to communicate with them and engage them in this process is probably better than disenfranchising them. We're going to show you a little quick video around single transferable voting, so I can sit down.
Cardiff University Students' Union is led by students. These leaders are elected each year, and all Cardiff University students are eligible to vote. Voting is easy. Head to cardiffstudents.com/vote and log in. Choose the election you want to vote in. Select the role and rate your candidates using numbers. Number 1 would be the candidate that you think deserves the role the most. Number 2 would be your second choice. You can number as many or as few candidates as you want. Once you're done, just log out. We add up all of the first preferences, and if it ends up that a candidate has 50% of the votes, they are the winner. If there isn't a clear winner, the candidate with the least number of votes is removed. If your first choice candidate is removed, your second preference votes are included and added to the remaining candidates. This happens until a winner is declared. If you don't feel like any of the candidates are right for the job, you can choose RON. RON stands for Reopen Nominations. If this option won the vote, we would start the election process over again. You can also vote at one of our ballot stations run by friendly students across campus. If you've got any questions, get in touch with us at elections@cardiff.ac.uk.
So we'll be pushing that out to students as well so that they can have a look through it and make sure that they understand kind of what's happening throughout that week. I'm going to pass you over to Steve. I'm just going to talk you through a worked example of what that election would look like.
Okay, so these are, I've removed the names from this, but this was a general election from a couple of years ago. And what you can see here is all the first round preference votes. So all the ones that people have put against the ballot papers are on here. This little tiny on the bottom, that's wrong, so that's reopen nominations. That's saying, I don't like any of these candidates and we need to do something different. And clearly we've got sort of 3 leaders here, with the person at the top there just about ahead on what they got. So 550, maybe 575 odd votes in that first round. So what we'll do now is Steve's just, with all the elections that are taking place in this election period, the threshold to hit is 50%. So once you get 50% of the vote, you have been elected, and that's the point where we stop. Of the total number of votes here, 50% is way over and above the number available here. So when there's no winner declared in that first round, what we do is we take the person with the lowest votes, remove them, and any subsequent preferences, as the video said, are reallocated out. So any of you who voted for Ron here, any second preference they've got will be reallocated elsewhere. This different coloured line at the bottom then is the non-transferred votes. So that's when somebody's voted for Ron, in this instance, they just put a 1 for Ron. Ron's been eliminated, but there was no other preferences, so that vote in essence is left on the side. So the next candidates then start being eliminated. As you can see, there's a few extra votes being picked up here. If we click through a few of them, you can see that things are beginning to change. If you pause there, Steve. What you can see now is that the person at the top there who was winning the election to start with has been overtaken now by the individual here, because they're picking up more second, third, fourth, fifth preference votes as you go through. If we go through towards the end, you can see now, so the winning candidate's got about 1,100 votes there compared to second place, which was just under 900. But bearing in mind they were winning in the first round. It's not unusual for the person who's winning to have this sort of scenario occur, but it probably happens every other year, I would have thought, in 1 or 2 positions. So the reason we want to show you this is to highlight how important those additional preferences are. If you remember on that first slide as well, go all the way back. So where was this candidate? They got about 550 votes. If we skip back to the end again, they won with 1,100 votes.
So that many rounds.
So actually, almost exactly half of the votes that they took were second, third, fourth preference votes, and so on. So when you're talking to potential voters, if they say, I'm already voting, my housemate's standing, I'm going to vote for them first, think, well, can I be second preference or third preference or fourth? And the more of those votes you get, the more likely you are to survive the election process and be successful in it. But I guess the most important thing is, what's the most important thing I was about to say? Yeah, so those subsequent votes are hugely important. So capture them in every opportunity you can, and make sure students understand what it means by using those additional preferences. Does that voting system make sense? Yeah. You will often find that students don't necessarily understand. It's not simply putting an X in a box and whoever's got the most X's wins. We want to make sure that you know how the system works as well as we can, because you can help be the communicator with voters as to how it works. But just remember, if you can't talk them through face to face that example, they're asking you to show them on their phone or their computer. That's the point we need to say, no, you need to go and find a ballot station, and they'll be able to assist you. Okay.
Okay, so just two final things, and then you can go home and enjoy your evenings. Is that we appreciate banners will be kind of a major part of your campaign, some of you. That's wonderful and exciting. You need to take them down after the elections. I receive complaints from students and staff when they're still hanging around. So we will ask you, once we've finished the election process, or once voting is closed and we've had our debrief, we'll say, right, go home and have a shower, but before you do that, can you take your banners down, please? If after about a week they are still up, I will I'll give you a call, leave you a voicemail, say, hi, can you take your banner down, please? If after a few days of that, you don't take it down, I will then charge you for the student staff costs of removing it. So you don't want that. And also, it just makes campus look a little bit more normal after the hoo-ha that elections will be. And then another thing on kind of the campus more generally and how the vibe is going to go down on that week. It is a strike week, so that may mean that there are a lot of students that aren't around. The reason I'm bringing this up with you is because I want to be honest with you. The fact that it may be more difficult to engage people. The other thing I want to say is that, as you can tell from this wonderful presentation, I'm boring. You are the fun people that are going to make people engage. We will be the process people that kind of say, right, elections are happening, get involved, but people will vote because of you. They will not vote because we're putting out tweets. They will vote because you are the exciting people. Think about your social media presence. Think about how you can engage people throughout this period. And as we've alluded to, campaigning kind of starts from tomorrow. So think about how you can lead up to that week on week commencing Monday, 2nd of March. So yeah, it will be a challenge, but you've got everything at your kind of disposal.
I just ask from a postgrad perspective, because obviously a lot of PGR students are going to be potentially might be striking as well. Like, because obviously some people view, like, if you go into uni buildings and stuff like that, it's crossing the picket lines. Like, how is there any things around that, or are we just going to have to come up with whatever we can do best? Because I feel like that's going to be really controversial for postgrad PPs.
It might be, it needs to be an individual choice. I don't think we can change the scenario.
In AGM did the statistical strikes as well, so like,
Yeah, I mean,
or is it just like do what you think's best?
if my prediction, and this is just my prediction, it's not necessarily what will happen, is that university buildings will be quiet for that period of time, and actually the place to be soliciting votes will be halls of residence, maybe the union building, might be elsewhere, it might be social media. We might find lots of students are going home for extended periods of time, and what you want to be doing is talking to people on Messenger and WhatsApp and things like that. It might be about going to society and club sessions, or going along to inviting yourself along to course rep sessions, things like that. So we can't control that environment. My gut feeling is the absence of people being on campus is probably likely to lead you away from needing to be in university buildings.
Kind of at that point, good luck with everything. It's going to be amazing. You've got everyone here supporting you and making sure that we provide everything possible. At this point, are there any questions that people have that they are happy to ask in front of people? Josh?
I'm just guessing that there is not a candidate question time.
That is a wonderful question. So on your information form that I'm going to ask you to all complete and hand back to me, this is so I can get you free t-shirts and you can wear them all week, so you don't have to invest any money in that. So make sure you hand those in if you want a free t-shirt. There will not be a candidate question time this election, no. So ignore that last question where it says, would you like to speak Welsh at candidate question time? Because there will not be a candidate question time this year. Any other questions?
Are we allowed to publicise Speak Week Thursday?
Ooh. That is a very good question. That makes me very excited. Yes, you can talk about Speak Week data. So, for example, as Steve's alluded to, Speak Week is happening this week. We will publish all of our data for that. We've published the best data for the last few years. We won't have this year's ready by that point. But yeah, you're more than welcome to shout about Speak Week and the student written submission. Everyone knows what that is. And all the boring data. Yes, please feel free to push that, as that is how we make change in university. One thing I will say is now that you're running the elections, if you are volunteering in Speak Week, that does not mean you can run around handing out cards and being like, I'm running! You should vote for me. Like, if you're volunteering for a particular activity, you're volunteering for a particular activity. Any other questions?
Just to follow up on that, and a question from the last session was about the opportunity to ask questions of the current existing officers in post and staff members as well. Do feel free to find any of the existing officers for the positions you're running for, pose them questions, talk to them about their election, about the job, find out as much information as you can from them. If you don't want to speak to them, you want to speak to members of staff or other officers, then again feel free to. You'll find all of our details on the Student Union website, and Steve and I, you would reach through the elections email address. But come in, talk to us. We genuinely want this to be as positive and as good an experience for you as it can be. So keep the dialogue open with us, and let's help you as best we can.
Wonderful. So as I say, 2 forms we need: candidate info, and if you are running to be a sabbatical officer, we also need your declaration, or whatever we've called that form in the pack. If you've got questions, please feel free to come and see us and hand your forms into any through us. Thank you very much for your time today, and good luck.